Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk today about something that is as complex as it is deeply human, the ebb and flow of relationships, the dance of distance and closeness, and the profound moment when someone comes back into your life after you've given them space. It can be confusing, even painful to step away from someone you care about. You might wonder, did I do the right thing? Will this space turn into permanent silence, or will they return? What was it about that distance that caused him to come back? The truth is, relationships are rarely as simple as we want them to be. They are messy, complicated, and full of lessons if we're brave enough to learn them. So let's take a closer look at why he came back after you gave him the distance he needed. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, something we should avoid or hide, but in truth, it is one of the most powerful forces in our lives. When we are vulnerable, we are showing up as our true selves, unguarded and open. It's in those moments of raw honesty where we allow ourselves to be seen without the protective layers we typically wear that real connection begins. Vulnerability is the gateway to intimacy, both with others and with ourselves. When we give someone space in a relationship, whether through physical distance or emotional time apart, we are often offering them the opportunity to reflect on their own vulnerability. By stepping back, we make room for each person to process their emotions, to understand their own needs, and to grapple with their fears and insecurities. In that time apart, they might begin to recognize what they've been hiding from, what parts of themselves they have yet to share, or the fears they've been avoiding. And this is where vulnerability begins to do its most transformative work. In these moments, they may discover that the distance between you wasn't just physical or emotional. It was an invitation to be more authentic, to face the parts of themselves they may not have been ready to confront. Sometimes people stay closed off in relationships because they fear being judged or rejected. But when given the chance to reflect in solitude, they might come to the realization that what they fear most, the judgment of others, is often rooted in their own fear of being unworthy or imperfect. This realization can be liberating. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we stop hiding behind walls of protection, and we stop fearing the rejection that comes from showing our true selves. The person who returns to you after having been given space may have recognized that vulnerability is not something to be afraid of, but something to be embraced. They may have seen the strength in allowing themselves to be fully seen, flaws and all. It's important to remember that vulnerability doesn't mean exposing every single part of ourselves immediately. It's a process, a gradual unveiling of who we really are over time. It requires trust. Trust that the other person will see you, not for your mistakes or your imperfections, but for your humanity. In this light, vulnerability isn't about revealing every secret or sharing every emotion. It's about showing up as who you are in that moment, no matter how messy or imperfect. When someone returns after you've given them distance, it often signals that they are ready to engage with the vulnerable parts of themselves, to open up in ways they may not have been able to before. The time apart can serve as a kind of awakening, a chance to understand what was truly important, what was left unsaid, and what was hiding beneath the surface. And in that return, there is an implicit understanding that both people are now bringing their whole selves to the table. The walls are lower, the facades are gone, and the connection is deeper for it. True vulnerability in relationships doesn't happen overnight. It's not a one-time event, it's a continual process. It's about showing up with courage every single day, with the willingness to be imperfect, to mess up, to grow, and to heal. And sometimes it's through distance that we are finally able to see how important that vulnerability is, not just in relationships, but in our own lives. When vulnerability is present, it invites others to step into that same space of openness. It invites the possibility of deeper, more meaningful connection. When you give someone the space to reflect and heal, you give them the chance to see how vulnerability can lead to profound growth both individually and together. And when they return, they often do so with a newfound sense of self, not as the person they were when they left, but as the person they are becoming. In a world where perfection is often prized over authenticity, vulnerability is a radical act. It's a choice to be seen, even when you're not sure whether the world will embrace what it sees. But when someone comes back into your life after a period of space, they may have learned that the only way to truly connect, to truly love, is to allow themselves to be vulnerable and to offer you the same openness in return. Emotional safety is the bedrock of any strong relationship, yet it is something that is often overlooked or misunderstood. It is the quiet space between two people where trust is built, where both parties feel secure enough to share their deepest fears, hopes, and desires without the fear of judgment or rejection. Emotional safety is not about always agreeing or being perfect in how we communicate, but rather about creating a foundation where both individuals can be their authentic selves, vulnerable and imperfect, knowing they will be met with empathy and understanding rather than criticism or dismissiveness. When emotional safety is present in a relationship, it becomes a container in which both people can grow, heal, and evolve together. They know that they don't have to hide parts of themselves or wear a mask to be accepted. The fear of being misunderstood, judged, or criticized diminishes because there is an implicit understanding that both individuals have each other's best interests at heart. It's in this space that people can share their insecurities, express their anger or hurt, or ask for what they truly need without the weight of shame or embarrassment. But emotional safety doesn't just happen automatically. It's something that has to be actively cultivated moment by moment through consistency, patience, and understanding. It requires vulnerability, not just in the willingness to open up, but also in the ability to listen without jumping to conclusions, without trying to fix or offer advice unless it's asked for. In order to feel emotionally safe with someone, we need to know that our feelings will be acknowledged, not dismissed. We need to know that our thoughts, no matter how messy or complicated they may be, will be met with kindness and care. When someone is given space in a relationship, they are often seeking not just physical distance, but emotional clarity, a chance to figure out where they stand, what they need, and whether the relationship itself provides the emotional safety they crave. It's during this time that they may come to realize whether the environment they were in before was one where they felt safe to be themselves. Maybe they felt judged or misunderstood, or perhaps they didn't know how to express themselves without fear of causing conflict. In that time apart, they might have reflected on what emotional safety truly looks like and whether they could find that space within themselves or in the relationship moving forward. And when they come back after having had that space, it often signals that they are looking for that emotional safety again, the sense that they can be themselves without fear of losing the other person's love or respect. They might have gone through a process of self-discovery, learning how to set boundaries, how to communicate more effectively, or how to listen more deeply. Their return could be a signal that they are ready to show up in a way that fosters mutual emotional safety, where both individuals can trust each other to be honest, to listen with compassion, and to hold space for each other's emotions without judgment. Emotional safety also goes beyond just what is said. It's often in what is not said, in the small gestures that communicate care, in the tone of voice, in the body language, in the way one person chooses to show up for the other when they are struggling. It's the reassurance that even in the most difficult moments, neither person will attack the other or lash out in anger. Instead, they'll approach each other with a sense of curiosity, asking questions, seeking understanding, and allowing each other to express their emotions freely. For some, emotional safety might mean knowing that they won't be abandoned when they are at their lowest. It's the quiet understanding that no matter what challenges arise, the relationship will not be threatened by fear or insecurity, because both individuals are committed to weathering the storms together. When emotional safety is present, both parties know they have each other's backs, and they are willing to make the effort to listen, understand, and support each other, even when things get tough. But emotional safety isn't a one-way street. It requires both people to take responsibility for their own feelings, to own their emotions and not project them onto the other person. It requires self-awareness and emotional maturity. It requires being able to communicate in a way that doesn't shut the other person down or make them feel small. If someone has been given space and they return, it might be because they've realized the importance of co-creating that safety, of showing up as someone who is capable of holding space for the other person's emotions just as much as their own. It's also important to note that emotional safety doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations or conflicts. In fact, when emotional safety is truly present, it becomes easier to face the hard stuff because there is the mutual trust that no matter how difficult the conversation may be, both people will approach it with respect and an open heart. They won't be afraid to disagree or voice differing opinions because they know that it won't lead to rejection or abandonment. They can disagree and still know that they are valued, that their voice matters, and that their partner still respects them. When someone returns after a period of distance, it's often because they've realized how crucial emotional safety is to the health of the relationship. The time apart may have given them clarity on what they were missing, on what they didn't feel in the relationship before, and what they need moving forward. And if they come back with the intention of creating that safe space for both of you, it's a sign that they value not just the connection, but the emotional well-being that underpins it. In the end, emotional safety isn't just a foundation, it's a dynamic process, something that requires continuous effort and attention. It's not something that can be taken for granted, but something that must be nurtured and protected. And when both people are committed to maintaining that safety, it can transform not just the relationship, but each person within it, allowing both to become more fully themselves and more deeply connected to each other. Space to reflect is often misunderstood as a form of rejection or withdrawal. In reality, it is a powerful tool for growth and clarity, both for individuals and relationships. When we create space, whether by taking physical distance or by allowing emotional time apart, we are giving ourselves and others the opportunity to step back from the noise of everyday life and to look inward. It's in these moments of solitude that we can confront our own thoughts, fears, and desires without the distraction of external expectations or pressures. This kind of reflection is crucial for personal development, as it offers us the time to evaluate where we stand, what we need, and how we want to move forward. When someone asks for space in a relationship, it isn't necessarily a sign that they are unhappy or that they no longer care. It is, in many cases, a sign that they need time to better understand their own feelings. Relationships, particularly those that are deeply emotional, often cloud our ability to think clearly because we become entangled in the day-to-day dynamics. We may begin to rely too heavily on the presence or approval of the other person, losing sight of who we are and what we truly need. Space gives us the room to reconnect with ourselves, to listen to our own voices without the influence of another person's thoughts or emotions. Reflecting on a relationship while apart doesn't mean distancing oneself in order to escape or avoid. It's about gaining perspective. When we are too close to a situation, it becomes difficult to see the full picture. Our emotions can blur our judgment, making it hard to understand what is really happening beneath the surface. Giving space allows us to pull back, take a breath, and observe the dynamics from a different angle. It's like stepping away from a puzzle to let the pieces fall into place on their own, allowing us to return with fresh eyes and a clearer mind. The time apart often brings the insight needed to identify what is working, what is not, and where adjustments need to be made. This space allows us to shed the weight of expectations, both our own and others. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that we should always be available, always be on call, always be in sync with the other person. But when we do this, we lose sight of our own needs. We forget that we too need time to reflect, to recharge, and to recalibrate. Distance, then, is not a form of abandonment, but rather an opportunity to breathe and return to the relationship with greater self-awareness and more clarity about what we want to contribute. Sometimes we need to create space not to evaluate the other person, but to better understand our own role in the relationship. In relationships, we often face moments of confusion or uncertainty. We may not always know how we feel or whether our needs are being met or whether the relationship is aligned with our values. Space gives us the room to sit with those uncertainties and to explore them in a more meaningful way. During this time, we might ask ourselves questions that we otherwise wouldn't have the time or mental clarity to consider. What do I need from this relationship? Am I showing up as my authentic self? Are we truly supporting each other's growth? It's through reflection that we are able to come to terms with our feelings, to sort through the complexity, and to make decisions based on a clearer understanding of who we are and what we want. For some, the act of stepping away allows them to confront their fears. These fears might be about commitment, about change, or about vulnerability. Relationships often bring up unresolved emotions, and sometimes we need time to process them separately in order to avoid making decisions based on fear or emotional impulse. When we are given space, we are not running away from the relationship. We are running toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and what we bring to it. It's in these moments of solitude that we often make the discoveries that ultimately strengthen the connection, because we return not just with answers, but with a more balanced sense of self. Reflecting during a period of space also gives us a chance to identify patterns in our behavior, both positive and negative. Often we get stuck in repetitive cycles without fully understanding why we react a certain way or why certain things trigger us. When we step back from a relationship, we can examine our own actions and reactions more closely. We can ask ourselves, why did I react that way? Is there something I'm avoiding or projecting? How can I communicate my needs in a way that is healthier and more constructive? This process of self-reflection helps us to grow and evolve, both as individuals and partners, by providing us with the insights necessary to break unhealthy patterns and to build healthier, more resilient relationships. Moreover, space allows both individuals to recalibrate their expectations. In the rush of everyday life, we can become enmeshed in what we think the relationship should look like or how we think we should behave. These expectations can create unnecessary pressure, making it harder to fully enjoy and appreciate the connection we have. Time apart allows both people to step back and ask, what do I truly need from this relationship? What am I able to give and what do I require in return? It gives us the ability to set boundaries, adjust our expectations, and ensure that we are moving forward in a way that honors both parties' needs and desires. It's not about abandoning the relationship, but about recalibrating it so that it's healthier, more sustainable, and aligned with our true selves. This space, though it may feel uncomfortable at times, offers the chance for renewal. After taking time to reflect, people often return to relationships with greater clarity, a stronger sense of self, and a renewed commitment to creating something deeper and more authentic. They come back not with the same issues that caused them to step away, but with a fresh perspective on how to approach those issues with more maturity and insight. In essence, space allows us to come back not just as the same individuals, but as evolved versions of ourselves, better equipped to navigate the complexities of the relationship. It provides the opportunity to return with more emotional depth, more understanding, and a more grounded presence that can only enhance the connection between two people. The fear of loss is one of the most powerful and primal emotions we experience as humans. It taps into the deepest parts of our psyche, stirring feelings of vulnerability, insecurity, and uncertainty. Loss, in all its forms, forces us to confront the fragile nature of life, relationships, and the things we hold dear. It's a fear that is not just about the physical absence of someone or something, but about the emotional void that is left behind when what we cherish is taken away. This fear has a profound impact on the way we interact with the world, particularly in our relationships, because it often shapes the decisions we make and the way we respond to others. It can motivate us to take action, to seek connection, or to pull away in self-protection, but ultimately, it is a reminder of the deep human need to be seen, loved, and valued. When we are faced with the fear of loss in a relationship, it often reveals something much deeper about our own sense of self-worth and attachment. It forces us to ask, what would happen if this person were no longer in my life? This question can feel overwhelming, but it is also an invitation to examine the depth of the emotional connection we have with the other person. The fear of loss can be so powerful because it speaks to the vulnerability of loving and being loved in return. We fear not only the absence of the other person, but also the sense of rejection or abandonment that may accompany it. The thought of someone we care about leaving or drifting away can stir feelings of inadequacy, as if we are somehow unworthy of their love or companionship. It may bring up insecurities about our value, our attractiveness, or our ability to meet the other person's needs. This fear of losing someone often triggers a response that is grounded in attachment. In relationships, we develop deep emotional bonds that intertwine our identities with those of the people we care about. We become so emotionally invested that the prospect of losing that connection feels like losing a part of ourselves. This is why the fear of loss can be so intense. It's not just about losing someone else, it's about the potential disintegration of our own sense of self when the connection we have nurtured for so long begins to unravel. In many ways, the relationships we form with others help to define who we are. And when that relationship is threatened, we are forced to reckon with who we are outside of it. This can be a deeply unsettling experience, one that brings up questions of identity, worth, and belonging. When distance enters the equation, whether physical or emotional, the fear of loss can often grow stronger. This fear may not always be rational or based on the reality of the situation, but it's a natural response to the uncertainty that distance creates. When we are apart from someone we care about, there is a part of us that wonders whether the distance will lead to something permanent. Will they forget about us? Will they find someone else? Will they realize that they don't need us the way we need them? The mind begins to spiral into worst-case scenarios, and suddenly the thought of being without that person becomes unbearable. In those moments, we may feel a sense of urgency to close the gap, to bridge the distance, even if doing so means compromising our own needs or rushing to resolve issues before we're ready. This fear of loss can push us to take actions we may not have considered, driven by the desire to avoid the pain of separation or abandonment. However, this fear also holds a paradoxical gift. While it can feel paralyzing or overwhelming, the fear of loss has the potential to reveal the true depth of our feelings. When we are confronted with the possibility of losing someone we love, we often realize just how much they mean to us. This fear forces us to confront the reality of the relationship, to assess whether it is something we truly value and want to fight for. It can act as a catalyst for change, pushing us to communicate more openly, to express our needs, and to appreciate the other person in ways we may have taken for granted. The fear of loss can bring a heightened awareness of the fragility of life and relationships, reminding us not to take what we have for granted. But the fear of loss is not just about the people in our lives. It can also be about the fear of losing ourselves in the process of loving someone else. In relationships, especially those that are deeply intertwined, we can sometimes lose sight of who we are outside of the connection. We may become so invested in the other person's needs or desires that we forget to prioritize our own. The fear of losing the other person can sometimes mask the deeper fear of losing ourselves, of becoming so absorbed in the relationship that we forget to take care of our own well-being. The idea of loss becomes a double-edged sword. We fear losing the other person, but we also fear losing the sense of self that the relationship has helped to define. At times, the fear of loss can prompt us to hold on too tightly to a relationship, even when it is no longer serving us. This is where the fear becomes more destructive because it leads to behaviors rooted in insecurity rather than love. We may try to control the other person's actions or emotions, seeking reassurance or validation to alleviate our own anxiety. We may try to keep things the same, resisting change because change feels like a form of loss. We may hold on to unhealthy patterns of behavior, afraid that if we let go, we will lose the connection entirely. The fear of loss, when unchecked, can breed unhealthy attachments that keep us stuck in cycles of fear, guilt, or resentment, rather than allowing us to move forward in a way that is healthy and liberating. In relationships, the act of forgiveness and healing is not always a solitary journey. Sometimes it involves both people working together to restore trust and understanding. In these situations, open communication, empathy, and mutual effort become essential. Both individuals must be willing to listen to each other's pain, validate each other's feelings, and work toward reconciliation in a way that respects both parties' emotional needs. Forgiveness can only truly take root when both individuals are committed to creating a safe and compassionate environment where healing can occur. This may involve difficult conversations, uncomfortable truths, and a willingness to make changes, but it is through this shared effort that relationships can evolve and become stronger. Ultimately, forgiveness and healing are gifts we give ourselves. They allow us to release the emotional weight that comes from holding on to past hurt, and they open the door to emotional freedom. While the journey may be long and at times difficult, the rewards are profound. Healing brings clarity, peace, and a renewed sense of connection to ourselves, to others, and to life itself. Forgiveness is not about letting someone off the hook, but about freeing ourselves from the grip of pain and resentment, allowing us to live with a lighter heart and a more open spirit. The desire to evolve together is one of the most profound and transformative forces in a relationship. It speaks to the innate human need to grow, not just as individuals, but in partnership with another person. This mutual growth is not about changing who we are at our core, but about expanding, adapting, and evolving into more authentic versions of ourselves, shaped by our experiences and the people we choose to walk alongside. Relationships that foster this desire to evolve together are grounded in a shared commitment to growth, whether personal, emotional, spiritual, or intellectual. These relationships thrive because both individuals recognize that their evolution is intertwined, and they actively support each other through the challenges, triumphs, and transformations that come with life. At the heart of this desire to evolve together is the recognition that we are not static beings. Life is fluid, and the people we are today are not the same as the people we were a year ago or even a few months ago. This constant change is a natural part of being human, and the relationships we form have the potential to act as powerful catalysts for that change. When two people come together, they bring with them their own histories, experiences, dreams, and fears. But when those individuals are committed to evolving together, they create a space where growth is not only welcome but encouraged. In such a space, the relationship becomes a mirror, reflecting back to each person the areas of themselves that need nurturing, the patterns that need breaking, and the strengths that need to be celebrated. It is a dynamic process, one where both partners are willing to look at themselves honestly, to face their imperfections, and to lean into the discomfort of change in order to become better versions of themselves. This shared desire for growth can manifest in many ways. It may be through shared goals, such as building a life together, creating a family, or pursuing joint passions and interests. But it can also be seen in the more subtle aspects of a relationship, the way two people communicate, how they support each other's individual dreams, or the way they encourage each other to overcome obstacles. Evolving together means that both individuals are equally invested in the relationship, not just in terms of love and companionship, but in terms of personal development. They push each other to be better, not in a way that feels critical or demanding, but in a way that feels empowering and affirming. They are partners in growth, helping each other to reach their highest potential while also recognizing and respecting the individual journeys they are on. The desire to evolve together also means that both people must be willing to embrace vulnerability. Vulnerability is the cornerstone of growth because it is through our vulnerability that we expose our true selves, our dreams, our fears, our flaws, and our aspirations. To evolve together, we must first be willing to be seen fully and completely by the person we are with. This requires a deep level of trust, as we have to believe that the other person will not only accept us for who we are, but will also support us as we evolve into who we are becoming. Vulnerability opens the door to authentic connection, allowing both individuals to share their inner worlds without fear of judgment or rejection. It is through this open, honest exchange that a relationship can truly foster mutual growth. It's important to note that the desire to evolve together is not about imposing change on the other person or expecting them to fit into a mold we have created for them. Instead, it's about creating an environment where both individuals can evolve in their own ways while still maintaining a strong connection. Sometimes the evolution that occurs within a relationship happens in parallel, with each person focusing on their own personal growth while supporting the other. At other times, it may require both individuals to grow in tandem, learning new skills, perspectives, or ways of being together. But in all cases, the evolution is rooted in a deep respect for the other person's individuality, as well as a shared commitment to the relationship itself. When we desire to evolve together with another person, we are not simply seeking comfort or stability. We are seeking a partnership that challenges us, inspires us, and helps us become more than we could be alone. This kind of relationship requires a willingness to let go of old patterns, to break free from limiting beliefs, and to confront the parts of ourselves that are afraid of change. It requires patience, as growth is rarely immediate or linear. There will be setbacks, misunderstandings, and moments of tension as both individuals navigate the complexities of change. But it is through these challenges that deeper levels of understanding and connection are forged. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity for growth, and every conflict is an invitation to learn more about ourselves and each other. In relationships that foster the desire to evolve together, both partners understand that growth is not a destination, but a continuous journey. The relationship itself is a living entity, always shifting, expanding, and transforming. As individuals, we are constantly changing, and our relationship must be able to accommodate that change if it is to remain healthy and fulfilling. This means that both individuals must be willing to adapt to new circumstances, to embrace new roles, and to let go of old versions of the relationship that no longer serve them. The ability to grow together means being open to reinvention, to redefining the terms of the relationship as needed, and to always being willing to explore new possibilities. The desire to evolve together also nurtures a deep sense of mutual respect and admiration. As both individuals change and grow, they come to see each other in new ways, appreciating the strength, resilience, and wisdom that comes from the journey. This respect for each other's growth creates a deep sense of appreciation for the unique qualities that each person brings to the relationship. The more each person evolves, the more they are able to recognize and celebrate the evolution of their partner. This creates a bond that is not just based on the superficial aspects of compatibility, but on a deeper understanding and respect for each other's journey. When we evolve together, we come to see each other as partners in a shared story, rather than simply as two individuals existing side by side. We become co-creators of the relationship, actively shaping and reshaping it as we continue to grow. However, the desire to evolve together also requires a level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. In order to evolve in a healthy way within a relationship, both individuals must be able to reflect on their own actions, motivations, and desires. This means being honest with ourselves about what we want, what we need, and what we are capable of offering. It means taking responsibility for our own growth rather than relying solely on the other person to guide us. Self-awareness allows us to navigate the relationship in a way that is respectful of both our own needs and the needs of our partner. It helps us recognize when we need to take a step back, when we need to push forward, and when we need to simply be present with each other in the moment. The desire to evolve together also requires flexibility and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. As individuals, we may not always know where our growth will take us, and it's impossible to predict what the future will hold. But when both people are committed to evolving together, there is a shared sense of trust that whatever the future brings, they will face it together. This trust allows both individuals to take risks, to step into the unknown, and to embrace the possibilities that come with change. The relationship becomes a safe haven for exploration and growth, where both people can experiment, make mistakes, and learn from each other without fear of judgment or failure. This openness to change creates an environment where both individuals can stretch beyond their comfort zones and reach new heights of emotional and personal growth. Ultimately, the desire to evolve together is rooted in the belief that the relationship itself is a living, breathing entity, one that can continue to grow and transform as long as both individuals are committed to nurturing it. It is about more than just being with someone. It's about being with someone who inspires you, challenges you, and helps you become the best version of yourself. It's about building a life together that is dynamic, ever-changing, and filled with endless opportunities for growth, discovery, and deep connection. When two people are aligned in their desire to evolve together, they create a partnership that is resilient, rich in meaning, and capable of weathering the challenges of life while continually becoming something more. In conclusion, the desire to evolve together is not just about staying in a reship. It is about actively nurturing growth, both as individuals and as partners. It requires mutual commitment, vulnerability, and a shared willingness to adapt, learn, and evolve in ways that strengthen the connection and bring both people closer to their fullest selves. Relationships that foster this growth become spaces of empowerment where both partners feel supported in their journey and where challenges are seen not as obstacles but as opportunities for deeper connection and personal development. The path of evolution together isn't always easy or predictable. It requires patience, trust, and a dedication to understanding not just the other person, but ourselves. But through this process, a relationship becomes a living, dynamic force, one that grows with the people in it and transforms through shared experiences and emotional intimacy. By choosing to evolve together, we embrace a partnership that continues to deepen, enrich, and inspire, allowing us to walk through life side by side, not only in love, but in mutual growth, understanding, and fulfillment.